Okay, hi everyone. First I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which I'm presenting this presentation from, which happens to be the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And I also want to thank Kirsten and the Scottish Drug Forum for inviting me to speak. My name's Jane. I work for Harm Reduction Victoria, which is the Victorian Drug User Organisation. We're located in Melbourne, Australia. We're peer-based, which means everybody that works at Harm Reduction Victoria is either a current or ex-drug user, but most of us are current. You know, it works really well. Drug users listen to other drug users. We have a peak body called ABLE, which is located in Canberra, another part of the country. And we first received any funding in 1988 from our Department of Health and Human Services. I just want to give a bit of context. I'm not sure how much you guys know about this wonderful land called Australia. Sorry if you already do know it, but I can bring your attention to the bottom part of the screen here, just here. This is Melbourne. That's where all the cool people live. No, that's where I'm coming from. There's Sydney. They're the two main cities that most people have heard of, and an ongoing battle over which one's better. We've got the better coffee, they've got the better weather, I guess. But Sydney got Australia's first injecting room. That opened in 2001, and it remained in trial status for a long time, like I think more than 10 years. We got this country's second injecting room here in Melbourne in 2018 on a 2-year trial, but last year they announced a further 3 years of trial. So, and you know, recently they did an independent review of the injecting room, stating that Melbourne needed a second one to take the pressure off of the first one. So let's see if we get our second one. I'm not holding my breath. So can I tell you a bit about what we do here at HRVic? We've got a program known as PAMS. I think it sounds like the name of a fine gentleman's establishment, but what it actually stands for is pharmacotherapy, advocacy, mediation and support. So it's a telephone-based service with the main aim of keeping people on a program. So the two types of pharmacotherapy that's available here in Victoria. It's methadone and Suboxone, which is a buprenorphine naloxone combination that comes in a strip that people put under their tongue. More recently, the monthly injectable versions of Suboxone, known as Buvidal and Supplicate, have been trialled, and as a result, some people are being maintained on that. OSTs dispensed from community pharmacies. It can be quite expensive, especially if you're unemployed, and PAMS gets a lot of calls asking for help with financial assistance. We're usually unable to do that. What we can do usually is pay just a few days and get them through till payday, and then the worker will negotiate with the pharmacist and the consumer to come to some sort of contractual repayment agreement. Yeah, so I'm sorry if I'm babbling. I hate Zoom. Have I said that yet? But yeah, by the way, we've got about 14,000 people on the program any given day here in Victoria. So DanceWize, probably one of the longest running programs that we have at Harm Reduction Victoria. It used to be called Rave Safe. They attend music events, the multi-day festivals. They've got over 200 volunteers. Like, they came from very humble beginnings, and they've built themselves into a really well-oiled machine with a really good reputation. They're really well known for training. They do training for security and event staff, as well as people who use drugs at events. They set up a chill space, and they will monitor people that don't perhaps need medical attention, but you know, they just need someone to monitor them, whether that's because they need a rest or, you know, they're having a psychedelic experience and just need someone to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. Yeah, they do a lot of what they call trip sitting. Yeah, and they've recently established DanceWize New South Wales, and they're looking at perhaps having DanceWize Queensland. So health promotion, this is a bulk of what we do at Harm Reduction Victoria. We do a lot of stuff around Hep C treatment. This on the screen is a series of posters that we developed when the new DAAs became available. And we just wanted to let people know how different the new treatment was from the old treatment. These posters were really popular, and I just think because they were simple, they were easy to understand. Yeah, they went down well. So the health promotion team does a lot of peer education workshops with people who use drugs. We do safer using education, which includes vein care and filtering. We also do workshops, of course, on Hep C and other bloodborne virus transmission risks, treatment options, safer ice use. We try and keep them really relevant and interesting. It can be hard sometimes. The PATH project, that stands for Peer Assisted Treatment for Hep. It was a pilot trial that employed 2 peers, both with lived experience of drug use and Hep C. We outposted them at a busy needle and syringe program in a primary healthcare service, and their main role was just simply to engage with people and build some rapport with the intention of eventually hooking that person up into some Hep C treatment. It was a new way of approaching it, and the workers did some great work. Okay, but then some pandemic happened and we had to suspend it. Okay, so the peer networker program here in Victoria, it's fully legal to go to a needle and syringe program and get equipment. However, if you were to pass that equipment on to someone else when you're not registered to do that, you can get into trouble. We know people come, they collect equipment for themselves and their mates. And so what we did, we sort of targeted people that we knew that were doing that. We approached them about joining the program. We spend a couple of days training them. They do all the peer education workshops we have on offer, as well as an introduction to needle and syringe program work. They get their first aid, and then we register them with the Department of Health and Human Services, so they get a legit legal outreach card that allows them to hand out equipment. We get them to keep some basic stats, and then each month we swap them their stats for a little amount of money. But it's really, really successful. It's you know, mainstream NSP see mostly males around 30 to 40 years old, whereas peer networker program is seeing 55% females and a lot younger group of people that aren't showing up in NSP. So, you know, that's awesome that they're doing that. They also act as an unofficial warning system. Nothing works better than word of mouth. If there's a bad batch out there, you know, by the time the health department will get the information and make up a resource and get the okay to put it out, you know, quite often the bad gear's gone. Peer networker program, drop the word, it's out there straight away and everyone's onto it straight away. It's a really good program. So communication, it's important for any role. Although the bulk of our communication is done face-to-face, we've also have our flagship publication called WAC. It's a magazine for users, by users. We've been producing WAC since we first came together. And for those of you who are interested, we've got every issue we've ever done available on our website. There's people out there who don't really even know who Harm Reduction Victoria is, but they sure as hell know what a WAC magazine is. You know, we're also active on social media, maybe not quite as active as we could be, but we are there. The D.O.P.E project works at educating people who use drugs, preventing overdose, as well as recognising and responding to it. We've had take-home naloxone available here since 2013. And that's probably enough about me babbling on what an awesome organisation I work for and telling you how wonderful things are, because this happened. Yeah. You know, that nasty thing. Yeah, I thought it was all smooth sailing, but not quite. You know, I can remember it was the CEO had planned to take some leave and I'd been given the role of acting up. And he was about to go on leave when all this started to happen, and he was going to cancel it. I mean, he was going to go to Vietnam originally, but he couldn't travel. But, you know, I said to him, no, take your leave. You need a rest and I'll be fine. And little did I know what was to come. You know, everything changed. We couldn't do any of the stuff we normally do. We couldn't have events. We couldn't do workshops, nothing face-to-face, no outreach. And that's sort of what we did. And the thought of having to transfer it to all online was just so scary. We're getting there. I hate being on Zoom. Have I mentioned that yet? Maybe already a few times, but yeah. So in the following days, you know, our government advised people to stay at home where possible. People were to work from home. You know, we weren't the kind of service that was going to adapt to working from home easily. You know, was starting to get staff geared up into doing that, you know, starting to audit what equipment people had at home in order to be able to work from home. Yeah, it just, everything sort of started to get real. And I remember at first, when I first moved to working from home, I thought to myself, I think I might like this, you know. I'm not a real morning person. I enjoyed being able to sleep in a bit longer, but I think it was about day 4 I started to, yeah, get me out of here, I hate it. So yeah, you don't know what you got till it's gone, I guess. But March the 12th was when reality really started hitting me in the face hard. So the first major event to fall was our Australian Grand Prix. That was followed by the comedy festival cancellation, the International Flower and Garden Show. People started panicking as they started to close the borders. Illicit drug supply was threatened. Prices went up. More people trying to get onto pharmacotherapy, which was really hard to access, especially if you're wanting to start up. People saying, what if my pharmacy shuts down? Or so, you know, by April the 11th, they had brought out changes to the OST guidelines. I've never seen anything get sorted that quick before in my life, but they did. And it went from, you know, people went from having to get a script each month to only having to get one every 3, and some people every 6 months. It used to be a maximum of 4 takeaway doses with usually given 2 and 2, and all of a sudden people were able to access 14 takeaways at a time. They introduced telehealth for appointments, which doctors were happy to prescribe OST by telehealth unless it was someone they'd never met before. You know, they didn't like starting someone up on a program, which caused a bit of a hiccup because, yeah, people were scrambling to get on OST thinking that, you know, our illicit drug supply was going to run out and they were going to get forced into involuntary withdrawal. They also made it possible for third-party pickup. For people that were COVID positive that needed to be dosed, they could now nominate somebody else to go and get it for them. So, and that way COVID positive people didn't have to be out on the street and or going into a pharmacy. So yeah. But how do you run a community-based peer program in the middle of the pandemic? I don't know. I really don't. It's the $64,000 question that we're still looking for answers to. It was such a complete 180 from what I was used to. I was struggling just to be able to stay on top of things. The number of phone calls that we were getting from people concerned about what's going to happen, how are they meant to score if they have to stay at home. You know, it was kind of crazy. For a short time, there was this really false rumour going around that the methadone was going to run out and the pharmacies weren't even going to be able to get it. And you can imagine what sort of panic stations that sent through people. But yeah. So, yeah, at Harm Reduction Victoria, we set about getting some resources out to our community. We developed these 3 here, 2 of them specifically around drug use and 1 dedicated to pharmacotherapy. And you know, the points we put on these resources were the repeated questions that we were getting from people ringing on the phone, yeah. So, you know, we had a lot of rough sleepers across the city and they were unable to go home and isolate because they didn't have a home to go home and isolate to. So our government said about housing Victoria's homeless people. There's about 2,000 people that they put up in the now empty hotels in the city. Yeah, it was, the housing workers did an amazing job of getting these people off the street. Some people had been really, really long-term homeless, you know, some people that hadn't slept in a bed for 10 years. Yeah, it was really amazing. And, you know, what they'd do, they'd put them in a hotel, they'd pay for the first couple of weeks, and then it would get to, if they wanted to stay on, they needed to start contributing out of their benefit. I started to wonder, when this thing's over, what are they going to do? Push them all back on the street? But recently they announced that they've extended the funding until April next year. So, and by that time they hope to not have to have anyone exit back onto the street. Hopefully they will have housing sorted for them after all. I don't know how they're going to do that. It's a pretty big thing to say you're going to do, but yeah. So it was pretty chaotic at the hotel. So like staff that were used to dealing with international travellers all of a sudden being faced with our cohort of people, our motley crew that we call them, they just had no idea how to communicate with our community, and they were actually scared. So we got in and did a lot of training to the hotel staff in how to deal with our community, which, you know, made things a lot better. I know I'm babbling, I'm sorry. Hang in there, I'm nearly finished. Okay, so don't know if you heard about this. I'm amazed at what some people on the other side of the world hear about Australia, but our government, for some reason, decided that they would announce immediate lockdown to 9 of the public housing towers, which had approximately 3,000 residents in them. It was a really punitive measure. It was really unfair the way it was done. People had no warning whatsoever. We started to get a few calls, as well as seeing social media posts from people within the towers needing to be dosed with OST. But it wasn't only OST that people needed. There was hundreds of people with normal scripts, heart medication, antibiotics, eye drops, you name it, that they needed to get filled. And yeah, we also had a doctor that was on the ground with us. You know, if anybody had gone into withdrawal, he was willing to give them the injection of Buvadal, you know, to help them through or whatever. People that were on a program already, we were able to continue to have them dosed inside. You know, but there were people there that it was such a strong police presence. They were so intimidating, and they refused to work with us for the first 3 days, and it made it really hard. And there were residents in there, people in there. I spoke to this one guy who didn't live there. He'd just gone there the night of the lockdown to score himself some pot. When he went to leave, the police were at the gate. Sorry, you can't go. He said, but I don't live here. They said, bad luck. You're caught in you go. He said, where am I supposed to sleep? And they said, well, whoever you were visiting, go back to their house. He couldn't say to the police, well, it was just a, you know, mangy pot dealer that I don't know that well. I can't ask him if I can crash there. So this poor chap was left wandering the halls for most of the days that they were on lockdown. But, you know, there were people in there that just wanted cigarettes, for example. There was alcohol and benzo withdrawal, which is really serious. That was going on. It was chaotic. It was really, really stressful, and it was hard. I was down there for most of the days of that lockdown. I was constantly doing cigarette runs, and people were just so grateful for, you know, what wasn't really a big thing on my effort. But, you know, I remember one day I'd gone to the base of the towers to meet someone and give them the cigarettes that I'd just got for them, and there was a policewoman standing there, and she said, oh, you know, these people, you know, they're just so ungrateful. What are you on about? She said, oh, that woman in there in the foyer, she's so belligerent. She wants coffee beans, marching up and down like she should get coffee beans. And I said, listen, you know, I like to have a coffee in the morning. That woman in there, she's done nothing wrong. She's not a prisoner. She's not a criminal. Well, she is a prisoner. You guys are locking her in there, but she's done nothing wrong. Why can't she have some coffee beans to have a cup of coffee in the morning? It's not that big a ask. I'm sure you had a coffee before you came to work. You know, and this policewoman, you know, just couldn't see any sort of reason. It was just really awful, you know. And there were people locked in their flats with animals. You know, I'm a huge dog lover, and, you know, you spend your life training the animal to let you know when it needs to go outside, and then all of a sudden you're having to tell your animal, no, not going inside. I mean, yeah, it was really, really poorly thought out, poorly planned, and yeah, I think there's a few class action lawsuits that are going to come in the future from that, I tell you. So yeah, I just have included some pictures from the actual event. You know, all the people prancing around in you know, PPE and a lot of the residents didn't even actually speak English, and they just were no good at informing residents what was going on either. You know, they got all this food delivered to them, but nothing was halal. And there was a huge Muslim community living in these blocks. And just, yeah, I remember there was a case of a woman who had given birth to a premature baby. And, you know, she'd been going back to the hospital each day to visit her baby, but all of a sudden she couldn't even go back and visit her newborn child. And, you know, I could go on and on and on with horrible stories, but, you know, I won't. Yeah, this is just some of the windows that people took photos of, you know, like up here in the top, a whole family, you know, they're not very big apartments. You know, there was a lot of domestic violence going on, and, yeah, they were very, very small flats, and I think it was a cruel and unusual thing to do to them, and it didn't seem to really get us out of the shit that much better either. But yeah, so that's me. I've come to the end of my presentation now. I feel really weird because I can't put it to you, the audience, for any questions, but if you have any, please don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm more than happy to explain something, or yeah, if I haven't been clear. But once again, thank you so much for putting up with me. Yeah, I will sign off now.